After 18 years of commitment, they let me go just because I was too expensive. They believed 3 fresh-out-of-college engineers could replace me. But the system they relied on, every line of code, every layer of security, was written by me. I didn't get angry. I didn't cause a scene. I simply walked away and left the system to collapse on its own. "You're no longer a good fit." That was the first thing Ethan Ross said when I stepped into the meeting room that Monday morning. The room was a sterile white, the table laminated wood, and the lighting as cold as his tone. I, Nathan Cole, 56, Chief Systems Engineer at Core Vista, had barely sat down when my sentence was handed down, a verdict on nearly 2 decades of dedication. "No longer a good fit?" I repeated, keeping my voice level. Ethan nudged his Gucci glasses up the bridge of his nose and crossed his legs. "You know how it is, Nathan. The cost of maintaining senior engineers is blowing up our budget. With your salary, we can hire 3 new grads." I smiled faintly. "And those 3 will rewrite the entire system I built from scratch, right?" He didn't answer, just slid an envelope across the table. Diane, HR, stood nearby, silent like a shadow, eyes avoiding mine. "This is your severance package," he continued. 2 months' pay, plus all accrued vacation days. A generous offer. I opened the envelope. Didn't look closely. I didn't need to. I'd seen this play before. "Don't you have any questions?" Ethan raised an eyebrow. Maybe he was hoping I'd lash out, flip a table, scream in his face. But I didn't. I simply stood, folded the envelope, and slipped it into the pocket of my old, threadbare blazer. There's nothing left to ask. Everything is crystal clear. They didn't get it. I wasn't calm. I was done. Like someone walking in the rain for an hour. Once you're drenched, you stop caring. As I left the office, I passed familiar faces. Colleagues I'd shared lunches with, battled deadlines alongside, clinked glasses with on Friday nights. Now, they stared at their desks or turned away. Classic, "don't look, you might be next" behavior. I packed my things in silence. A mechanical mouse I'd bought with my own money because the company was stingy with equipment. A miniature model of the server infrastructure I once designed for the Chicago branch. A faded photo with the engineering team from 2011, back when we believed we were building something big. 18 years, packed into a battered cardboard box. In the basement parking lot, my phone buzzed. A message from Liam, the database engineer I personally hired 10 years ago. "Nathan, just heard. The whole department's freaking out. They don't understand what's going on." I didn't reply. Instead, I drove home, to the small house by Lake Erie, where my wife, Susan, and I had lived for over 20 years. She was arranging flowers in the kitchen, her blonde silver hair tied neatly at the nape. When she saw me come home early, she simply asked, "It's done?" I nodded. Susan poured me a glass of bourbon, saying nothing more. We both knew. This wasn't a shock. The signs had been clear for a year. When they started hiring fresh MBAs to optimize processes. When meeting invites stopped, including me. When Ethan showed up with his smug face and calculating eyes, I knew. I'd seen it before. I sat on the porch, bourbon in hand, watching the lake ripple under the fading light. They thought I could be replaced easily, that I was just a high cost. What they didn't know, what they couldn't know, was that Core Vista's system was me, not a figure of speech. I wrote every line of code, built the backup algorithms, constructed overlapping security layers like a maze, and I alone held the map. I'd proposed hiring a documentation team. They declined. Budget reasons. I offered to train internal staff. They said, maybe next quarter. That quarter never came. Now they'd made their choice, and I would let them walk that road, alone. Susan placed a hand on my shoulder. So, what now? I took a sip, the sunset glinting in my eyes. Now, we live for ourselves. 12 days after that farewell, I was out back fixing the sprinkler pump when the phone rang. The screen showed a name I didn't care to see. Ethan Ross. I let it ring. Once, then again. He left a voicemail. The smug tone was gone, replaced with something vaguely desperate. Hey, Nathan. There's a small issue with the back end. The new engineers can't access the payment module's data stream. Any chance you could call back and walk us through it? Just a few minutes. I didn't call back. I played the voicemail, listened, and deleted it. After nearly 2 decades of being seen as just an expensive item, even a few minutes of my time now came at a price. That night, Susan and I were watching the old movie Apollo 13 when my phone lit up again. This time, it was Diane, the same woman who had pushed the severance envelope toward me. Hi, Nathan. I hope you're doing okay. Core Vista would like to bring you on as a temporary consultant, just for a few weeks, to assist with the system transition. We're prepared to offer $350 an hour. What do you think? I turned off the screen without replying. Susan glanced at me, her gaze calm, as if already understanding the decision forming in my head. I hadn't spoken a word yet, but in my mind, I heard a slow, quiet laugh. Now you realize my worth? The next day, I got a surprising email from Anderson Wallace, the CTO of Nova Edge, a rising startup specializing in real estate management solutions. I'd heard of them on a few technical forums. Dear Mr. Cole, I heard about your departure from Core Vista. We've long admired the system you built there. Integrated, seamless, high-performing. Nova Edge is preparing for a major infrastructure expansion. Would you be interested in discussing a senior role with full design authority? I sat upright, not because of the money, but because of 2 words: full authority. No more interference. No more executive meddling or mid-project budget cuts. No more babysitting kids who didn't want to learn. I arranged to meet Anderson in person at a quiet riverside cafe in Buffalo. He was young, under 40, but sharp-eyed, and unlike Ethan or any of the fresh MBAs before him, he spoke with something rare: respect. I want a system that doesn't just run well today, Anderson said. I want one that can stand strong for the next 10 years, and I want the guy who's already done that to do it again. I looked him in the eye. Then I need my own team and time. Who do you want? Anderson asked. The first person I want, I said, is Liam Monroe, and I know where to find him. That night, while I still hadn't officially accepted Nova Edge's offer, Core Vista was already spiraling. Liam messaged me. They're going down. Maintenance and payments, completely offline. No one can log in. Ethan nearly screamed in the boardroom. I replied with one line. They chose this path. The next day, Ethan called again. I picked up, for the first time. Listen, Nathan, he said bluntly. All pretense dropped. We'll pay you $600 an hour. Just 2 days. Help us fix the payment gateway before clients start canceling contracts. It's not about the money, I said. You fired me because you thought I wasn't worth my salary. Now that your system's broken, suddenly I'm worth triple. So this is revenge? He asked, his voice trembling. No, I said, calm and steady. I'm just doing what you did. Making a business decision. I'm not Core Vista anymore. I have my own choices. And I hung up, not out of spite, but because I knew this was only the beginning. I accepted Nova Edge's offer the following week, without hesitation. An 18-month contract, the title of Chief Systems Architect, a salary 1.5 times what Core Vista had paid me, full authority to choose my engineering team, and complete freedom to design the new management infrastructure from scratch. No pressure, Anderson joked during our first meeting. Just the entire future of the company in your hands. I nodded. As long as I've got the right tools, I'll give you a system worth betting on. The first person I called was Liam. He didn't need time to think. Someone who had watched a system collapse layer by layer without being allowed to intervene wasn't going to pass up the chance to rebuild it from the ground up, the right way. We got to work immediately. I sketched the system architecture across the walls of the meeting room, not in PowerPoint, but with markers and giant sheets of white paper covering every surface, every security layer, every data stream, every module handshake had to be clear, verifiable, a discipline Core Vista never allowed me to pursue thoroughly. I brought in 3 more veteran engineers, including one who used to be a rival of mine at a real estate software firm in Western New York. I didn't need yes men. I needed people who could argue me into a better design. Meanwhile, Core Vista kept spiraling downward. Liam, still in touch with a few old colleagues, sent me updates that read like funeral bells. Customer data missing. Investor board pressuring Ethan to falsify metrics. Graham, CFO, resigned. $2.8 million in quarterly losses. Westford Properties threatening to terminate contract. Then one day, I received an email from Jeffrey Westford, CEO of Westford Properties, Core Vista's biggest client, overseeing more than 12,000 housing units across the Northeast. Mr. Cole, I've learned you were the original architect behind Core Vista's platform. We're evaluating alternative infrastructure providers. Could we schedule a meeting to explore options? I forwarded the email to Anderson. Less than 24 hours later, we were sitting in Nova Edge's boardroom across from Jeffrey and 2 of his aides. I need a system that's stable, secure, and scalable, Jeffrey said. Most important of all, it can't rely on just one person. I nodded. I understand. That's exactly why Core Vista failed. I laid out a 14-week transition plan, complete with data migration, backup protocols, stress testing, and, most importantly, full documentation. Every line of code annotated, every API interface diagrammed, every function understood and independently tested by at least 2 engineers. Jeffrey didn't hesitate. Nova Edge gets the job. If your system performs as promised, I'll migrate all 12,000 units over within 6 months. By the time we signed with Westford, Core Vista was still patching its crumbling infrastructure. Ethan had vanished from LinkedIn. Diane had resigned. Rumors were flying that they were scrambling to sell. Then, on a rainy September afternoon, Anderson walked into my office with a strange look on his face. "You're not going to believe this," he said. "Core Vista is in talks to sell. To us. The price? Just 25% of what it was worth the day you left." I raised an eyebrow. "And are you actually planning to buy them?" "Not planning," Anderson said. "I want you to lead the integration. If the deal goes through, we'll become the largest digital property management firm in the eastern U.S. I looked at him. "I'll do it, but on one condition." Anderson nodded. "Name it." "We don't repeat their mistakes. We document everything. We train thoroughly. No shortcuts. No tossing untested code into production just to hit a deadline. Understood?" "Crystal clear," Anderson smiled. "There's no one else I'd trust to handle this." We finalized the acquisition in 3 weeks. And one crisp autumn morning, I walked back into the old Core Vista headquarters for the first time since I'd carried out my cardboard box. The sign had changed. It now read, Nova Edge Integrated Management. I walked into the server room where I had once plugged every cable, placed every switch, mounted every firewall with my own hands. This time, I just stood behind the glass. "Not going in?" Liam asked. I shook my head. "We're replacing it all. Let the old system rest." 3 days after Nova Edge officially took over Core Vista, I was invited to speak at the first all-hands meeting with the remaining staff from the old company. The large conference room, where Ethan once gave smug, self-congratulatory speeches, was packed. Some familiar faces lowered their eyes to avoid mine. Others, those who had worked on systems with me for years, gave me small nods, quiet acknowledgments. I stood at the head of the table, scanning the room slowly, then began. "We're not here to repeat mistakes. We're here to rebuild. This time, every line of code, every process, every decision will be documented, understood, and owned. No one will be pushed out for being too expensive. You don't work for me. You work with me." There was no applause, but the silence in that room was the deepest form of respect I'd ever felt. From people who once watched me walk out in silence. That afternoon, I received an email from Justin Firth, the former Deputy Chief Financial Officer at Core Vista, now temporarily supporting the asset handover. The subject line was simple. "Nathan, you need to see this." Attached was a chain of internal emails recovered from the old servers that Justin had pulled while reviewing the data. Correspondence between Ethan Ross and members of the board, dating back to nearly a year before I was fired. "Cole's systems are too intricate. He's created deliberate dependencies to protect his position. We can replace him with modular architecture, hire young devs, build something simpler and cheaper. No documentation is a blessing. It makes the switch easier once we drop the old stack." I sat frozen. What I'd long suspected was true. Ethan didn't just see me as someone to cut costs on. He saw me as an obstacle to selling the company. He crafted the illusion of cost optimization to pave the way for a quick flip sale to impatient investors looking for inflated growth. I scrolled to the last line, an email Ethan had sent just before my termination meeting. "Once Cole is out, we'll bring in consultants and reframe the infrastructure as an asset-light model. 3 months? Tops." I closed the laptop and clenched my fist. I wasn't angry about being fired. I was furious that they treated everything I'd built over 18 years like garbage to be thrown away. Right then, Liam knocked and entered, holding a printed report. "You need to see this, the Core Vista backup. Entire financial and operational data from the past 3 years. It's unrecoverable." I opened the report. The error came from a missing security step in the backup protocol, exactly the part I'd insisted had to be manually verified with high-level authentication. Ethan had scoffed at it when I explained it last year. "Can we salvage it?" I asked. "Yes," Liam said, "but we'll need the original root credentials. Meaning, you." I sighed. "All right, let's do it. Call it saving myself." But before I could start, my desk phone rang. Internal extension. I picked up. "Mr. Nathan, this is Kayla from Westford Properties. I'm calling to inform you. We officially terminated our contract with Core Vista last month. But now that we've heard Nova Edge has taken over, we're very interested in continuing and expanding our partnership." I chuckled softly. Everything was coming full circle. That night, I came home late. Susan had left dinner warming in the oven, with a small handwritten note. No need for revenge. Just win. I ate quietly, remembering the last time I walked out of Core Vista, carrying that box, humiliated. Now I was here, sitting in the command seat, integrating the entire infrastructure, signing contracts with old clients, recovering data Ethan nearly destroyed out of greed and ignorance. The next morning, Justin Firth stepped into my office, coffee in hand, eyes full of humility. "Ethan's been removed from the executive board. The full leadership team wants to know if you'd consider returning in an ongoing advisory capacity." I didn't answer right away. I just looked at him, calm but firm. "I'm not returning. I never left." One early winter morning, light snow dusted the window panes of my new office, now located on the top floor of what used to be Nova Edge headquarters, renamed Nova Vista Technologies. I was sitting there, finishing up the final system integration diagram between the old Core Vista infrastructure and our new platform, when Anderson walked in with a stamped folder in his hand. "Congratulations," he said. "The board just approved the infrastructure merger plan, and they've appointed you Global Vice President of Engineering." I nodded, not overly excited. I didn't need to be. This wasn't luck. It wasn't a reward. It was the natural outcome of a series of choices made at the right time, by the right people, in the right way. That afternoon, I returned to Core Vista headquarters, or rather what remained of it. The old company sign had been taken down. The IT room held only a few abandoned swivel chairs, dark monitors, thick with dust. I visited the old tech hub that had once been my base. On the whiteboard, some scribbled notes from the final engineering meetings before my dismissal were still faintly visible. A crude message written in blue marker caught my eye. "Ask Nathan." I smiled. They had known all along. There was no quick substitute for that kind of knowledge. But they had tried anyway. And in doing so, destroyed what they never understood. That evening, I hosted a small dinner at home, inviting the core engineering team, those who had followed me from the start or joined during integration. Liam sat next to me, raising his glass of bourbon. "You know what? Ethan's been quietly applying for jobs at 3 companies. All rejected him. Word about the Core Vista collapse spread farther than he expected." "Serves him right," someone else added. "He didn't understand the system, but thought he could control it with just Excel and PowerPoint." I stayed quiet. I didn't need to tear Ethan down. He'd already done that himself, with arrogance and ignorance. The following week, I got a call from Harold Lawson, Core Vista's original founder, now retired in Florida. His voice was still firm, like the day he first interviewed me 18 years ago. "I saw the news. Heard you're the one running Nova Vista now. Looks like they finally came to their senses." "Yes," I chuckled. "But it didn't come cheap." Harold paused thoughtfully. "I once told Justin, never get rid of someone you can't replace. He didn't listen. But I'm glad, in the end, everything's back where it belongs." After the call, I sat alone in my office, watching the dashboard on the wall light up in steady green across every system metric. Every number was proof. There's no shortcut to sustainability. When Nova Edge finalized the merger, Jeffrey Westford returned to visit the new headquarters. He stepped into the conference room, shook my hand, his earlier skepticism long gone. "Victor, or should I say Nathan now?" he asked. "Call me Nathan. I don't need the title. I just need the system to work." Jeffrey laughed heartily. "A whole engineering empire in one sentence. Simple, but powerful." That meeting had no speeches. No, I told you so. No need. I simply presented the final plan. The new system would fully replace the old Core Vista infrastructure within 6 months. Full documentation. 3-tier training. No one left behind because they didn't get the code. No more fear that one guy leaves and the whole system falls. Because this time, I built something that didn't depend on me. This wasn't revenge. It was correction. Done right. And this time, I was in full control. 6 months later, Nova Vista completed the final phase of the transition. The new system I had designed fully replaced the legacy infrastructure that had once powered Core Vista. Not only did we retain every former client, we expanded into Pennsylvania, Ohio, and Georgia. Westford Properties added another 5,000 units to their contract, making Nova Vista the largest real estate management platform in the entire Northeast. One Monday morning, Anderson walked into my office with a coffee mug and a printed proposal in hand. "Got a minute?" he asked. I nodded and gestured to the chair across from me. Anderson sat down and passed me the document. "The board has approved your proposed educational initiative, Nova Vista Academy, a place to train the next generation of systems engineers, built on the architecture principles you pioneered." I looked over the proposal. Full authority over curriculum development, faculty hiring, scholarships for underprivileged students. Every line of it affirmed one thing. What I'd built wasn't just software, it was legacy. "I don't need a higher title," I said. "I just want to make sure the lessons we learned from Core Vista's failure are never forgotten." Anderson nodded. "That's what I want too." 2 months later, Nova Vista Academy officially opened its doors at our New Jersey branch. The first lecture I gave was titled, "Systems Can Change. So Can System Architects. But Trust Must Be Earned and Kept." In the classroom, I saw bright eyes, some too young to even remember when Core Vista dominated the market. But that didn't matter. What mattered was they were growing up with the mindset that engineering isn't just about getting things to run. It's about building things that last. On Thanksgiving Day, I received a handwritten letter. It was from Justin Bay, the son of Core Vista's founder, the same man who had signed my termination notice. "Nathan, I want to thank you, not just for salvaging what was left of Core Vista, but for doing what I never had the courage to. Rebuild from the rubble. My father still asks about you. He calls you the stubborn one who turned out to be right. And I agree. I hope that one day I can stand beside you, not as the one who let you go, but as a student." I held the letter for a long time, not because I was emotional, but because finally, silent justice had spoken. No lawsuits, no dramatic exposés, no long-winded condemnations. I simply didn't go back to fix their mistakes. I built something better. A year later, at a national tech conference in Boston, I stood on stage before 800 software engineers, sharing lessons from the Nova Vista project. No flashy slides, no buzzwords. I just told the story of a man who got fired for being too expensive and quietly proved that, in the end, quality always wins. When the talk ended, the audience stood and applauded, long and loud. I walked off stage and stepped into the hallway, watching the light reflect off the tall glass buildings across the street. Susan texted me, "You did great. I've never stopped being proud of choosing you." I smiled, loosening my tie. For the first time in years, I felt genuinely light. I didn't seek revenge. I didn't sabotage. I simply let them learn the hard way, an expensive lesson about underestimating a person's worth. And then I rebuilt. Not just a system, but a perspective, a philosophy, a new generation that knows to respect what once seemed outdated.